Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming to this year's 2022 PAC-RIM conference. My name is Alan Abrija, and I'm a disability specialist at the Leeward Disability Services office here at Leeward Community College. There are two of us in the office, myself and my partner, who is a program coordinator, Chris Hernandez. We are open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., excluding holidays. And currently we're conducting appointments virtually, over the phone, and in person with advance notice. Today, I'm going to talk about an introduction to disability services and also cover the differences between high school and college accommodations. Just to give you a brief overview of what we'll be covering today, I'll be discussing the law and post-secondary education, the differences between high school and college, the responsibilities of post-secondary institutions, and we'll also go over some frequently asked questions by our students. We'll talk about academic adjustments, and I'll also inform you about AHEAD guidance. AHEAD is the National Professional Development Organization that provides us best practices and advice on how to approach the work that we do. I'll also cover getting started with Leeward DSO and the accommodations process here at Leeward Community College. And we'll end the presentation with some words of encouragement. The law and post-secondary education. So students who are attending college or transitioning from high school to college will be covered under the Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, which also falls under the American with Disabilities Act of 1990. And here I give you a brief overview of both laws. So under the Section 504, no otherwise qualified person with a disability shall solely by reason of disability be denied benefits, be excluded from participation, or be subjected to discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. And under the ADA is a civil rights guarantee that provides protection from discrimination to individuals on the basis of disability. It extends these civil rights protections to employment in public and private sectors, transportation, public accommodations, and services provided by the state and local government and telecommunication relay services. As an educational institution that is publicly funded by both federal and state revenues, the University of Hawaii and Leeward Community College specifically fall under these laws. So any student or individual who wishes to come to our campus, register in our programs, take classes with us, are free to do so without having to worry about being discriminated or being excluded based on their disability. If you were to Google transitioning from high school to college, it would bring up several resources for you, either as a student or a parent. Here I'm going to cover the differences between high school and college in 6 fascinating facts. And this is just one of many examples that you'll find on the internet if you were to Google this topic. First, we'll cover the laws. So in college, there is no IEP or individualized education program in college. Your educational rights as a student in high school is covered under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And this doesn't apply to post-secondary education. In college, we comply with the ADA or the Americans with Disabilities Act and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. So any accommodations you receive in college will depend on your individual needs and will be based on your disability documentation. Number 2, accommodations. So some of the accommodations you used in high school may not be provided at college and may not be appropriate. Some of the accommodations that we do provide, examples are books in alternate formats, extended time on tests, access to early registration, and taking tests in a limited distraction room. So these are just few of the more common accommodations that are requested by college students. Advocating. So the big difference between high school and college is that in college, you're going to have to self-identify and seek assistance and advocate for yourself. Instructors will expect to talk to you and not your parents when learning about the accommodations you need in their class, if any issues arise. When it comes to classes and grades, in high school, your classes are more likely smaller, and your school personnel generally determine your schedule, and your grades are based more on assignments. So you have a lot of homework assignments in high school that you need to turn in, and all of those points add up to make up your grade, in addition to any projects or exams that you might have. In college, it's going to be a little bit different. So you may have larger classes and meet less frequently and have less interaction with instructors. And your grades can also be determined by fewer assignments. So even though you may have homework assigned to you as a college student, most of the time it might be more to reinforce the lecture or what was being taught in class that day. And your grades are going to solely, most likely depend on exams and quizzes. And you might run into some courses that you're taking where you have one midterm and one final, and you have to do well in those exams because your grades are going to be based solely on the midterm and the final. So that's one of the big differences between high school and college in terms of class format and class structure. And that brings us to structure of your classes. The structure of your classes will also be different. Depending on how many days per week you meet, classes might last from 50 minutes to 3 hours. So here at Leeward Community College, we meet Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and Friday is a non-instructional day. So if you come to class Monday and Wednesday, your classes are going to be 50 minutes long. If you come to class Tuesday and Thursday, your classes will also be 50 minutes long. You might have a class that only meets once a week, and in order to make up for the entire week, that class could meet anywhere from 2 to 3 hours a week in that one day that you're meeting with everyone. So it really depends. And it also varies at other campuses, other universities, and other colleges. Responsibilities. In general, you'll have a lot more freedom in college, which sounds great because you can make your own schedule. You can also decide whether you want to attend class that day or not. The choice is going to be up to you. No one's going to call your parents if you miss class. So that sounds like, the ideal situation for some of you, but that can also be a detriment to your success if you're not able to practice independence, if you're not able to take initiative on your own. So you'll also have more responsibilities in this new environment. Here we have the differences between IDEA versus ADA. So again, just to remind you, if you are in the K through 12 setting, or specifically in high school transitioning to college, you fall under the IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act. And the things that are covered under the IDEA are mandatory education for minors. So you need to be in school. It is the law that you have to be in school from K to 12. And our public schools are required to provide you with FAPE, which stands for Free and Appropriate Public Education. Also under the IDEA, the school is responsible to identify students who are not succeeding. So let's say you're missing class, exhibiting some behavior issues in the class, not paying attention, or you're coming to class every day, but you're not doing very well in your assignments. So someone will reach out to you or your parents, and you could possibly be identified for a student who might benefit from special education services. The laws are in place to ensure student progress. So under the IDEA, if you are identified as a student with a disability and it's been determined that they're going to create an IEP or a 504 plan for you, if there's any point in time in your studies where it may seem like you're not going to pass a class, or you're continuously not doing well on the exams, or you may be at risk of not graduating or moving on to the next grade level, usually your IEP team will come together and develop some strategies, some planning, and also provide you some accommodations or adjustments to ensure that you succeed and not fail. So that's very common under the IDEA and happens quite frequently in the K through 12 setting. As a college student, you now fall under the ADA, which is the Americans with Disabilities Act. So under the ADA, college education is considered elective. That means there is no requirement for you to be here. So it is voluntary and up to you if you decide to attend college after you graduate from high school. And because of that, students are responsible for self-identifying and engaging in the accommodations process. So as a student with a disability attending Leeward Community College or any other college campus for that matter, it is up to you to go to the Disability Services Office on your campus and let them know that you are a student with a disability and that you require certain accommodations in order for you to be able to access your classroom. And that brings us to our last point under the ADA. So the laws are in place to ensure equal access. Again, this is very different under the ADA, which are in place to ensure progress and success. And that doesn't mean we don't want you to succeed. It just means that the mechanisms for you to succeed do not fall under the ADA laws or the Disability Services Office. So we have other resources on campus available to you that will help you with the success, including yourself. So success is going to depend solely on your ability to learn the coursework, how hard you study, how well you utilize your resources, and those resources could be your instructor for the course. If there's anything you don't understand, we always tell students the first person you can always ask or should ask is your teacher, because they're teaching you the content. They see you every day in class, and they do have office hours. You can also meet with them outside of class if you have questions about any of the course material. If you need more help than they can provide, most schools, including ours, also have a tutoring center, a writing center. So if you're taking a particular subject, you don't understand the course content, you can always make an appointment with our tutoring center, and usually they will have someone there to help you with that particular subject. And I do say usually because again, tutoring is a service and not a required accommodation. Although most schools will have them, it's not required by the law that the school actually provide tutoring for you. But most schools, because they want our students to succeed or their students to succeed, they do have resources such as tutoring and mentoring that you can access. And they try their best to have tutoring for every content area. Every semester, there may always be one or two subject areas that you just won't have tutoring in, and that's where you really have to depend on your instructors for help, and also forming possibly study groups among your peers to help you go over the class material. So what does this all mean? So in post-secondary institutions, it just means that, again, under the ADA and the Section 504, we cannot deny an applicant admissions because he or she has a disability. We also, because of the way the law is written, where you are able to self-identify, meaning it's up to you whether you want to let us know about your disability or not. Because of that section in the law, we're also not able to make pre-admission inquiries about an applicant's disability status. Some students apply to our school and sometimes have the expectation that we're already going to know about their disability, or the high school they graduated from is going to let us know, or during the admissions process, they also included a copy of their IEP and expect us to just provide the accommodation. So again, that's not how it would work at the college setting. And that's, again, because you have the ability or the right to self-identify or not self-identify. So we can't have anything on our application process that requires you to let us know that you have a disability or you don't. Again, colleges do not have a duty to identify students with disabilities. That is up to you to make that choice. Also, when you're requesting any type of adjustments or accommodations, we cannot provide accommodations that fundamentally alter the nature of a service, program, or activity. We're also not responsible for providing any type of personal attendance or aids. So individually prescribed devices, readers for personal use or study, or other devices or services of personal nature, such as tutoring and typing. Here we have just some frequently asked questions that students sometimes bring to our attention. One is, when should I request an academic adjustment? So although students may request an academic adjustment from their post-secondary school at any time, students should request it as early as possible, only because certain adjustments or accommodations may take longer to implement. Sometimes it requires us to meet with the instructor to find out if the accommodation is going to be appropriate for their class. And while we're waiting for this, while we're taking the time to make these adjustments or determine these accommodations, you might have a test coming up, and then we might not be able to make that determination on time. And then later on, we determined that you were eligible for extended time, but because you took so long to self-identify or didn't self-identify early enough in the semester, that you might miss accommodations on that particular test. So although you can identify any time, the best time really is before the semester starts. So if you're transitioning from high school, graduating recently, the summertime before the fall semester starts is the best time to engage with our office. If you're a continuing student, maybe you went through several semesters and you're going now from fall to spring and you realize I should have requested accommodations for my fall classes. The best time would be to come and see us during our semester break between fall and spring semester. And those breaks are actually shorter, usually about 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks long. So again, it's very important that you engage with our office as early as possible. What documentation should I provide? So usually what we require is any type of documentation that states your disability and also gives us a clear explanation on how your disability affects your learning in the classroom, how it creates a barrier for you, right? So schools usually require documentation be prepared by an appropriate professional, such as a medical doctor, psychologist, or other qualified diagnostician. The document should provide enough information for you and your school to decide what is an appropriate academic adjustment. Students often ask, I had an IEP in high school, does this count? So generally, it's not sufficient documentation because the differences between post-secondary education and high school education vary greatly. Also, what you need to meet the new demands of post-secondary education may be different from what you worked, or may be different from what worked for you in high school. Also, in some cases, the nature of a disability may change. And again, documentation should reflect current state and limitations. Sometimes we have students bring in an IEP and it was from the 5th grade. So, it's at least 5 or 6 years old and not current. I want to speak for our institution specifically here at Leeward Community College. Although some institutions may not even look at the IEP at all and not allow you to submit it, here at Leeward, we understand that sometimes this might be the only documentation you have. So we do accept the IEP. We don't necessarily count it as documentation that would state your disability and make that connection for us. But it does provide us with some background information on you in terms of perhaps what skills you struggled with, what were challenging for you, and some of the things that the school implemented in order to assist you with those deficits that you have. So, if possible, we do ask that you have actual assessments, psychological testing type of documents from your doctor or psychologist. But if you absolutely have nothing except for your IEP, we can definitely take a look at that if that's all you have. So what are academic adjustments? So here are just some examples of adjustments or accommodations. Arranging for priority registration, reducing a full-time course load from 12 credits to 9 credits, providing alternate format text, and this could be text with large print, text in electronic format, so maybe you need to run it through a screen reader. Substituting one course for another, that's not a very common accommodation we provide, or even not a very common request that we receive, but we do understand that in other colleges, depending on the situation, the subject area that's being pursued by the student, this is something that could come up, where students may ask to substitute one course for another. Providing note-taking support is very common. Providing American Sign Language interpreters. And I'd like to say the most common accommodation requested and provided by most institutions is extended time for testing. You're probably wondering what priority registration is, why you would need it. So sometimes we have students who just tend to learn better at different times of the day, possibly. Maybe in the morning, it's just not a very conducive time for them to learn or intake information. So they may want to come to school at a later time, 9 a.m., 10 a.m., or maybe even closer to lunchtime. So if you're a student that doesn't have enough credits, you usually would register last at the end of the semester, at the end of the registration period. And usually what that leaves you is with less choices for time, less choices for teachers, if you're looking for a particular teacher in a particular subject. So with priority registration, you can decide if you want to come to school only Monday on Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, or if you want to come to school in the evening. Some of you might work in the daytime and you only can take evening courses. So that's why we provide priority registration. Yeah. I'm going to talk a little bit about AHEAD. AHEAD is the Association on Higher Education and Disability. It's also the professional organization for disability services personnel across the United States. So we look to AHEAD for our guidance in helping us do the work that we do. If there's any update to the laws, any updates in best practices, usually the AHEAD organization is where we would turn to get an update on these things. So AHEAD guidance is the primary source of information is the student self-report. So here they're talking about what we would accept as information in order to make a determination on student accommodations. So the primary source of information, of course, is you, the student. You know, what kind of information can you provide for us? And secondary source is information gained from the interaction with you during our intake appointment and any type of observation we have of you during that appointment, right? Tertiary source is the external documentation that we request from you that usually comes from your physician or psychiatrist. And then, of course, everything is done through an interactive process. So for example, if you request an accommodation and it's not something that we necessarily would provide or commonly provide, we can't just say, no, we don't do this. So, you know, you're on your own or too bad. So we do engage in an interactive process to determine why is it that you're requiring a specific accommodation. So even if we have to say no, or it's not an appropriate request, the interactive process at least allows us to determine maybe there are other services that could meet your needs aside from the Disability Services Office. So that's why we engage in the interactive process. And every situation is handled on a case-by-case basis. So for example, if we have two students engaging in our office, both students might have ADHD. And then one student is granted extended time for testing, and maybe the other student is not. And then you're wondering, how come my classmate got it? We have the same disability and he has different accommodations than I do. And again, that's because everything's handled on a case-by-case basis. And then it really depends on the situation you're in and how your disability affects you in the classroom. So you are going to see differences among students with common diagnoses. Here we have a visual representation of how you get started with our Disability Services Office or step-by-step process. So we do have a website that we direct students to where they can get started. Here we have the steps to apply. So when you get to our website, you'll see the 6 steps required for you to apply for our services. When you click on the program online services link, it'll take you to another web page where you'll see the get started here symbol. So you would click there, enter your UH username and your UH password, and then you'll be asked to answer a few short questions about yourself and why you're seeking classroom accommodations. When you're done answering the questions, you'll be required to submit the forms electronically. And once you do that, we'll receive it on our end and your name shows up in our appointment queue. And then we will then reach out to you to schedule an intake appointment. We usually do these intake appointments face-to-face, but since the onset of the pandemic, we've been doing most of our appointments through Zoom or virtually or over the telephone. We still have students come in to request face-to-face appointments, which is fine. We just ask that you let us know in advance and that you comply with our health and safety guidelines. So the Leeward Disability Services Office accommodations process involves student self-identifying, going through an initial intake interview, and this is also a time where you can submit supporting information. Once the intake interview is complete, the DSO office determines the appropriate classroom accommodations. Again, based on the information you provided for us, whether it's documentation from a doctor, answers that you gave us during the intake interview, all of that is put together to make our determination. Once we determine those accommodations, you have a chance to look at it and decide whether you're going to accept it or not. If you decide to accept it and approve it, the next step would be for you to email your course instructor the acknowledgement of your accommodations. So once your instructor receives notice, they will also acknowledge the accommodations, and at that point they will become active. So if you are to receive any type of note-taking support, extended time for testing, that will automatically be put in place once your instructor acknowledges the notice. Right? The intake appointment usually is a one-time appointment, so we don't have to meet every semester to discuss your disability and make a new determination. But if there are any changes, if you feel like maybe we gave you extended time, but you felt it wasn't enough time, or maybe there's some accommodations you feel like you're not going to need. So any type of changes or anything you want to discuss, that's when we would require you to make an appointment with us, and we could revisit the intake process and the interactive process at that point. So that pretty much covers today's presentation. Again, would like to thank everyone for coming. I hope this was informative for you. If you were a parent and if you're a student, I hope this really helps out when you're making your transition from high school to Leeward Community College. So I just wanted to end with some words of encouragement. For students with disabilities, we really encourage you to know your rights and your responsibilities, because if you do that, you're going to be a much better equipped student to succeed at the post-secondary level. We encourage you to work with us here at the DSO because we want to support you. We do want you to succeed. We want to point you towards the right resources in order for you to succeed. But most importantly, we want to make sure you have equal access to your courses. And it's always great to have a support system. So, I would definitely encourage you to seek the support of your family, your friends, fellow students, and also other individuals who might be experiencing disabilities as well. It's always good to have that support system around you. And know your talents, right? Know what you're good at, recognize that, and capitalize on that. And most importantly, believe in yourself as you embrace new challenges in your education. And again, thank you for attending today and for viewing this, this recorded session. Again, my name is Alan Abrija. I'm with the Disability Services Office here at Leeward Community College. You can also reach us by emailing leedso@hawaii.edu. And another reminder, we are open Monday through Fridays, 8 to 4 p.m., closed on holidays, both state and federal. And this is our main number if you need to reach us. And also there is a link that takes you to our main website that has more information on not only how to access our services, but also how we make determination on the accommodations that we provide for you. And also if you have questions on what type of documentation you need to provide, you'll find all of that on our DSO website. Again, thank you very much. Have a good day.